So this story broke last Tuesday, a little bit after we recorded last week's episode. Equibase is looking at a rating system for horse racing, specifically for lower level races that could provide an alternative for claiming races. I'm quoting from the Blood Horse story here, with an eye towards simplifying some current race conditions while providing new race options to fit a track's horse population. Equibase is moving toward creating a rating system similar to those used overseas. Project leaders believe a successful effort could provide a tool that would allow increased starts from horses in training. The project leader, Chance Moquette, has a quote in here. It says, "You hear about horses who have run out of places to run. Maybe it's a filly who's out of conditions, but because she's worth six figures as a broodmare, the connections don't want to run her in a $50,000 claiming race." Equibase, just getting started on this project, wants to hear from all corners of the industry, so make your voice heard. It's got currently 4 working committees of 5 to 10 members to speak for varying interests, trying to have a system in place for a test run later this year. So this is something that's going to be rolled out relatively quickly if they can get some consensus from the industry. To me, this is a great idea. Like, this is it. The problem of not being able to find races for your horses and find their level is increasing as field size shrinks, as foal crop shrinks, and just having like some stratified rating system so you know where you fit and you don't necessarily have to risk losing your horse for a tag if you don't want to, I think is absolutely crucial. And I just, it ties back to horse welfare too, just because you look at the data, and a lot of time, and it says this in the story that there's somewhat of a correlation between horses who change hands a lot and having catastrophic injuries, having breakdowns. Now, first of all, I just think in general, like, I feel bad for horses who are constantly moving in and out of different barns. Like, it just has to be very, very stressful for them on top of the stress that's already induced by living at the racetrack and training pretty much all year round. And it makes sense that it makes sense intuitively that not every barn is going to know the intricacies of every single horse.
Right.
So that, I think, puts them at greater risk if they're constantly changing hands. I think this makes a lot of sense. Anything that can increase field size, I'm pretty much all for it. And it works overseas. Like, it works because you know where your horses fit. You don't have to scour the condition book. You don't have to have a freaking law degree to read the conditions of some of these races. John, I'm curious, your thoughts as an owner. You guys mostly have higher level horses, right. But I'm sure there are times where you're looking for spots for your horses and it's just, they don't show up easily.
Well, and I think there's 2 things at hand here, Joe. Number one is, you mentioned the lower level claiming races. And for the first 30 years of existence, that's what we did. We were a claiming outfit. So I'm very in tune with horses changing hands and trying to have to figure out, what medications work, which ones don't, what they're allergic to, what they like to, eat. Do they need a goat? Do they need, special equipment? All those things. Now, some of that has been identified and cataloged in the form of the HISA website. So you can now go through and see, right. What medications horses are on, when they were injected, and where. So that kind of defeats that argument a little bit. The other part of the argument, though, I don't agree with, and that is the higher classed horses that maybe you have a filly that you don't want to lose in a claiming race, but is out of conditions. I think racetracks have done a pretty good job of adding additional features to races. For example, there'll be like a 2 other than, or a horse that hasn't won in 6 months. So there are other options with regard to that. And one of the things that Aaron Yagoda, who races in New York primarily, and I were talking the other day. And one of the things that would actually alleviate this problem without trying to incorporate an entirely new system to our game is you make a claiming race a $500,000 claiming race, or you make it $1 million claiming race. Nobody's going to claim a horse at that level, but it keeps all their allowance conditions available. And, what if you have a well-bred filly and you don't want to go through a sale, or you don't want to go through, a digital platform or anything like that? You run it for $500,000. I mean, that would be an incredible opportunity. You don't lose a condition if the horse wins. And you have like-kind horses that are running against each other without having to incorporate an entirely new system, which you mentioned you need a law degree to read condition books anyway. I don't know if this would simplify it or if this would make it more difficult with adopting a new system from Europe. I'm all for things that will help the industry. I just don't know if this is going to necessarily address some of the issues that they're throwing up there. I think there might be easier ways to address those issues.
I mean, I think this simplifies it plenty. Like, you have a rating system. If your rating is between 70 and 79, you fit in this race. It's 80 and 89, you fit in this race, and you wouldn't lose conditions here either. Like, you wouldn't. That's the problem to me. It's not just claimers. Like, if you have an allowance horse we have a bunch of these in the barn at West Point right now, and we're not alone. Like, you have a horse that's not quite graded stakes quality, but isn't a claimer, and they've won 3 allowance races. Like, you're shit out of luck. There's really nowhere for you to go. This is the idea that this would have a home for those kind of horses as well. And the argument to me against it, such as it is like, who's making the determination? Like, that's definitely something that needs to be fleshed out. But I think in general, like, this is anything to simplify the condition book. Like, this would simplify it and just make it based on your rating, how fast the horse is, what kind of form that they're in. I honestly don't see any downside to at least trying it and seeing if it has a positive effect on field size.